Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get in the AI Game, 5 ways to use generative AI in instructional design. I'm Dr. Laura McNeill. I work at the University of Alabama. I'm an assistant professor of instructional technology. So generative AI is here to stay, and it's definitely here to stay for instructional designers. So I'd like to encourage you to embrace it. And today we'll look at 5 ways you can use generative AI to improve your efficiency and help you design impactful, engaging, and personalized instruction and training. So I'd like to share this quote with you. For all the excitement and innovation occurring around Gen AI, the current media frenzy has raised many concerns as many concerns as has inspired breakthrough new thinking. So we need to do the critical foundational work that ensures everyone can trust the results. And that's what I'd like to share with you today. And a few disclaimers before we get started. The only constant is change, so we're still learning about generative AI. Understand there's much that we don't know, there's much that I don't know. So what I say today could be different tomorrow. Gen AI is not perfect. Inaccuracy is real. Hallucinations are real. So approach generative AI use with common sense and critical thinking skills. It's also your choice whether or not you use generative AI or any AI tool. It is a tool, one of many that you use as an instructional designer. So you choose when, how, and if to use it. And there's also a process to follow with generative AI to get the best results. So we'll talk a little bit about prompt engineering and then practice, iteration, and refinement, things that we're all familiar with. So our quick agenda for today, just a brief introduction to generative AI, and I'll try to answer the question, will generative AI replace instructional designers? Then I'll go through the 5 ways to use generative AI, and I'm using the acronym DICE. So delegate, innovate, create, evaluate, and educate. And I wish we had time for Q&A, but I'd like to encourage you to reach out to me with any questions. There will be a slide at the very end that has my email information. So generative AI, an introduction. So what is it really? And it's a type of artificial intelligence technology that uses a large language model foundation, and it produces content, text, images, audio, and data. And the thing about generative AI is it talks to you, the user, in a conversational way. So it makes it ideal for creating interactive and personalized learning. And a disclaimer, I think a lot of folks use the term generative AI and ChatGPT interchangeably, but ChatGPT is only one tool in the Gen AI family. So there's lots, a few are listed below: Bing, Perplexity, Google Bard, Claude 2. So explore all of these generative AI tools. So what can Gen AI do? It can translate languages, answer questions, personalize learning, solve problems, make recommendations, and write like humans. So very cool stuff. And Gen AI is especially appropriate and useful when it comes to adult learning. So it can be fun, it's efficient because it streamlines content creation, it's engaging, it doesn't get impatient if you make mistakes. So how great is that? And it's accessible and available 24/7. So for learners who need information quickly, and if you'd like to have fun and explore different topics, then AI can work really, really well for adult learning. And we'll look at some ways how. So will generative AI replace instructional designers? So I just want to level set that a lot of people think that ID is just gathering content from a textbook, so existing content, writing descriptions, creating course shells. They think that we are the help desk. So all of these things are not instructional design. So what instructional designers bring to the table that generative AI can't do is bring that human element and leverage all of our knowledge and research and tools about how people learn to create these solutions that are sticky, effective, and engaging. And so we use critical thinking, context, and a deep understanding of these performance gaps, our learners, and their needs. So generative AI, again, is a tool that we can use as an instructional designer to have more efficiency in our process and learn different ways to generate content and different aspects of course designer training. And I really like this quote from David Wiley. He is a professor. He's also been the president of AECT, which is a great organization to get involved in if you're an instructional designer. But he says the right way to think about these tools is that they're incredibly helpful for creating first drafts for humans to then review, augment, and polish. Really love that. So the first D in the first element of the DICE acronym is delegate. So how to delegate, and I love this approach from these folks at Tarrant County College, and they're in Texas, but they have created this AI-assisted human-driven learning approach. So they say it's a model that ultimately preserves the established human roles of learning designers and subject matter experts because these roles hold value in the instructional design process. So as you approach AI, just remember we have to keep the human element in there as we approach creating learning and training. So who, when, why, and what in the delegation process. So who can use it? And IDs, L&D experts, anyone involved in course design or training. Your SMEs can use it. So when is this helpful? When is Gen AI helpful for us? And I believe in the analysis, design, and evaluation stages. So what things can you generate? And informational resources are really great to generate with Gen AI. Existing content, facts and figures, and first drafts of learning objectives. Now, I haven't had a lot of good luck with learning objectives, and I've tried it a number of different ways, but it still needs work using Gen AI. So that's why we say first draft, discussion prompts, rubrics, quiz questions, and activities. And so the big why is that it saves time. Gen AI can complete these tasks in a matter of minutes. And so let's look at the time savings. And if you're familiar with Brian Chapman's study back in 2010, he came up with 4 different levels to classify e-learning projects. And 1 is the most basic and 4 is the highest and most complicated. So for a level 2 project, that's a little bit higher than your most basic course. His ratio that he came up with for course development is 184 hours by an instructional designer or instructional technologist or learning expert to produce 1 hour of e-learning. So Ethan Mollick, who's a thought leader in AI and education, estimates that AI can speed up the process by 50%. So if you take a 90-minute finished course and you deduct 50%, you're saving 17 8-hour workdays. So that's huge in terms of what we can do as an instructional designer. This means that if we have a SME that is slow to generate content, you can generate some of this content for them, send it off, have them vet it, refine it, put it into their own words, but it can get the process started. And that's just one example of how we can save time when we're in that waiting stage. So what do ID thought leaders say? And I pulled this just from different searches, articles, and again, it's that higher productivity with using Gen AI, 30 to 80%. Again, that's Ethan Mollick. And the interesting thing is he says that people are happier with offloading annoying work that is hugely time consuming. So Devlin Peck, a huge time saver, dramatically decrease the cost and time necessary to create informational resources. That's David Wiley. And I like this a lot. What we didn't have was a way to quickly go from nothing, a blank Word document, empty PowerPoint deck, a non-existent storyboard, to something that was halfway decent and ready for an initial review. So that is the power of generative AI, is to get us from nothing to something. And that something is not perfect. It will have to be vetted. You'll have to use common sense and critical thinking skills. You'll have to iterate, but you're not starting from nothing. So different ways to innovate with generative AI. And I just wanted to say that so many concerns about Gen AI and all of the things that can go wrong kind of cause this AI paralysis. And this author says, are we overlooking these transformative tools that AI brings to the table because we're so paralyzed about what is AI and what are we supposed to do and is it going to take everyone's jobs? So try to set that aside as you're thinking about generative AI and different AI tools, and think about what the positives are and what this can do for us as instructional designers. So here are some of the ways that you can use generative AI to promote innovation. So you have this vast knowledge base. You have access to so much information. And just a note that ChatGPT, at least the free version, only goes up to September 2021. So if you're looking for information past that date, it will actually tell you, I don't have that information because I'm only trained up until that date. So you'll need to go to Claude 2 or some other generative AI to search that more recent information. It does help spark creativity. It can help you improve communication. You can put in a speech and have it critique your speech, or an elevator pitch. It can enhance your critical thinking by pointing out ways to improve a document, the way that you've written something, and it can also identify knowledge gaps, and so places that you need to strengthen a skill or your learners need to strengthen a skill. Personalization with generative AI, especially from the learner aspect, is so interesting, and I thought it would be good to go through the steps used in generative AI tools to really personalize learning. So first, Gen AI collects information about a student's performance, preferences, and learning history. So the more you use a generative AI tool, the more it learns about you or about the learner. Then the AI program processes the data to gain insights about strengths, weaknesses, and learning styles. And then using those insights, it tailors content and learning pathways, and then recommends assignments, resources to optimize the student's learning experience. So the more it knows, the more it can tailor learning and help that student progress to the next level. And these are ways to enhance the online experience. And this is similar to innovating, but adaptive learning. So if a student excels in a particular area, AI matches that and presents more advanced material. So we can't necessarily do that with a textbook. So these learners are more challenged and engaged. Again, we just talked about this, but the personalized learning paths, and students can progress at their own pace. It is available 24/7, so they have a built-in tutor, your learners do, and they can answer questions, provide explanations, and offer guidance. And this is really cool. AI can match students with similar interests or goals, encourage teamwork and peer support, even in the online setting. So that's a really cool thing. Match similar interests, goals, abilities. Immediate feedback is huge, especially with online learner motivation. So students are getting that feedback. They know right away which areas to improve upon and where they need to modify their work. And then, of course, AI is great at curating content, articles, videos, resources, podcasts, anything. And this ensures that the material that you're offering to the learners, or the information that learners are accessing, it's always new and fresh and relevant. So, how do we actually create with generative AI? What is the best way to use it? And again, think about it like a tool. And David Wiley says, instructional design expertise will be reflected in the output of these systems in proportion to the degree that ID expertise is embedded in the prompts fed into the system. So it's garbage in, garbage out, or awesomeness in and awesomeness out. That may be a little bit over the top, but what you put in and the effort that you put in writing your prompts really, really matters. And so I've read over a lot of information from different thought leaders, and this is a clean and quick way to write a prompt and put it in one of these generative AI tools to get some output. So you tell AI its role. You give it some context about the course or the training. You need to be very, very specific. So use numbers and use specific terminology, give it parameters, be learner centric, and you can even tell it what tone to use, which is pretty cool. So hints, specificity and nuance is necessary. And I'll give you an example of this. Just changing one word can change the generative AI output. Don't assume that Gen AI responses are accurate or aligned, especially after submitting your first prompt. You may have to do it 2, 3, 4 times. And as I mentioned, responses can vary greatly by changing just one word. And a prompt is just the text that you enter into a large language model like ChatGPT to get a response or get that output or information. So here is the example of just changing one word and this outcome, and it's not written in a way that an instructional designer would write this, but learners will be able to describe opportunity cost. And this is in a microeconomics course. So we ask Gen AI, whatever tool we're using, what is a good assessment item for this learning outcome? And Gen AI says a case study or a scenario-based question. Then if we change that good to efficient, an efficient way is multiple choice questions or a true-false question, something quick. Then what is an equitable assessment item for this learning outcome? Problem solving or an open-ended question is generated. So that's how powerful Gen AI is, and that's how careful we have to be with our prompts and our prompt engineering. So here are some examples using the steps that I shared with you. And I won't run through each one, but if you wanted to generate a scenario, you tell it, you are an expert course designer. I'm going to give you these 3 learning objectives, and you insert them. For each objective, design a scenario or analogy that relates to whatever the course topic is. And these should be relevant to my learners, who are, and then you insert that information. The same with generating content and also these situations. So how can I motivate my learners? So review my objectives. For each objective, write a driving question that will motivate and focus my learners. My learners are these people. And I really like this as well, design for belonging. So you can put in the content that you've used for a course or a reading list with a student profile or a large, I guess, your audience analysis. And then Gen AI can provide you recommended changes that talk about whether or not diversity is reflected in these resources, or are there biases that exist? And that allows you to maybe modify those resources or that content that's within your course. So Gen AI can do a lot. So Gen AI concerns, so evaluate. How do we know Um, what are the concerns? How do we know how to do this correctly and ethically? Using these tools? So some interesting things. So the degree of interaction with AI is negatively correlated with learner satisfaction. And then research examined the relationship between the frequency of AI use and student perceptions of AI. And there's no correlation between chatbot usage frequency and course satisfaction. Students are concerned about AI's unreliable answers, and at least in this study, they weren't sure about using Gen AI because they didn't want to fail their courses. Negative experiences with AI systems come from students' unrealistic expectations about AI and misunderstandings, which is why we have to educate our students, each other, why we have to keep up to date on what's going on and just be very transparent in talking about how we use it and why we should use it and when it's not appropriate. So as this next point says, it's important for students to develop their AI literacy, how it works, advantages and disadvantages. So ethical concerns beyond cheating. Gen AI inherits biases from the data they're trained on. So this can just perpetuate discrimination and other concerns. There are many, many privacy and security risks. And if you are using generative AI, do not enter any personal information, do not enter any proprietary information, don't enter any company secrets or things that you don't want the rest of the world to know and that you don't have permission to share, because Gen AI will just become trained on that and it's out there for the entire world. Gen AI content sometimes can be difficult to understand in terms of how the content came about, why specific content was generated. So again, critical thinking comes into play here. Gen AI also can develop very highly convincing deepfake content, including videos, audios, photos. And so this causes concern about misinformation, identity theft, and other things. And then, do you have permission to use the source material on which the AI program was trained? So, do we own the original content? If we take information from something that's copyrighted or trademarked and then change it inside AI, do we really have permission to do that? And a lot of times the answer is no. So be really careful what you use inside generative AI. And finally, educate. And I think it's important for everyone to talk about generative AI and acknowledge our fears and concerns, but also read and research generative AI and different forms of AI, and keep up to date on what's happening in the field. And my recommendation is to find one or two thought leaders, follow them, and then maybe expand who you're following, but determine where you're getting your information from and make sure that it's reliable. David Wiley does a great blog. Ethan Mollick does a wonderful blog. And Philippa Hartman, she is from the UK, and she puts out a lot of great information in short bursts that just keep you up to date about generative AI. I really encourage you to try it yourself. Try different tools, try Claude, try Llama, try Bing, try ChatGPT, and see how it works for you. Can Gen AI write something quickly for you? Can it do a course outline that may take you a day to do? And at least it'll get you started or kicked off. You can generate some content for that subject matter expert who just isn't returning your calls or emailing you back with any information. Put a package together for them and say, please critique this. Could this work for the course? What are your thoughts about this? How can we modify this so that it works for your students? And then practice transparency. I'm allowing my students to use ChatGPT in our instructional technology courses as long as they acknowledge that they've used it. And believe me, I know my students, I know their writing, and yes, Gen AI can write in your own tone. It can learn the way that you speak, but I don't think it's to the point where it can necessarily fool uh, someone if you know them very, very well. So I think it's important that we don't prevent people from using Gen AI. And I think as instructional designers, we can tell our subject matter experts that you use ChatGPT to do something or you use Bing to do something. And then maybe that will spark conversation with them so that they feel more comfortable about ChatGPT as well. So thank you so much for your attention, and I will try and move this out of the way in case you'd like to reach out, but it's jlmcneil at ua.edu if you have any questions. Thank you so much for your attention and have a wonderful day.